Hello? Test? 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 Alright. Yo, what's going on, gamers? Welcome to number three? Welcome to number three of What's That Build? Basically, I go over all of the builds that I most commonly use and use this mainly as a reference for people that want to know what exactly I'm doing, as well as a breakdown of some of the important numbers. If you guys haven't checked them out already, first two probably going to be linked down below. Otherwise, please hit that subscribe button, go check them out. Pretty good stuff in there. Today, we got a pretty interesting one for you. Most of the ones that I've done in the past, I've covered 5 separate warframes, but today's going to be a little bit unique, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, just hopping right into the build first of all. First one I've got for you all today is we're going to cover my Inaros build. Now, Inaros, pretty tanky frame, a lot of stuff you can do with them, but what I've done with this one is I've basically done a focus around Elemental Sandstorm, which is the Sandstorm augment, gains 50% of ability range and has a 100% chance of inflicting status effects based on the damage types and mods on the equipped melee weapon, which we will get to in a second. So, pretty important mod. Basically, once you get up and going, you can just spam Sandstorm all through your entire mission and basically never die unless you run into like a nullifier or some energy leech Xmas and you don't exactly just kill them in time. This is also a very common build that I like to run in Netracells. I run this build solo in there. Seems to usually I have about a 90% success rate, just getting it done first go. Most of the time when I fail my Netracells, it's usually because I get like the double bleed effects, where it's like, oh, you're constantly taking damage and jumping stops that, or oh, you're just constantly taking damage. And usually when I get those double bleed effects is usually when I start to somewhat fall apart on the run, but for the most part, pretty solid to get through. Some two pretty key mods to cover in this is both of the Archon mods. First one being Archon Intensify, you get ability strength, and then restoring health with ability gives more ability strength, which works with your Elemental Sandstorm because with your Sandstorm, you actually heal yourself doing it. So as you constantly spam your Sandstorm, you are healing yourself through the damage, which also then makes your Sandstorm even stronger. So, pretty straightforward mod with how that works. Nothing too fancy there. Now the other one, which then also will be explained with the melee weapon, we are doing Archon Stretch. So, increased ability range, our Sandstorm's going to reach out further, sucking enemies from further away, dealing more damage to them. But the important part is that abilities that deal electric damage restore energy over 5 seconds. Basically, the more enemies that we hit with our Sandstorm, the more that Archon Stretch is going to continue to proc, which is then going to refill our energy more and more, thus allowing us to continue to spam Sandstorm. Arcane Avenger, you take damage, you get a increased critical chance, you're not always going to have your Sandstorm up, so having that chance for increased critical chance with your weapons, pretty neat. And then your standard Molt Augment, the more kills you get with your Sandstorm, the stronger your Sandstorm is going to be. Now, going to the actual weapon, because, Elemental Sandstorm is based on your mods from your melee weapon, the actual weapon itself does not matter. Obviously, use your preferred weapon of choice, but ideally your melee is just going to be a stat stick. So for the one that I chose to use Enodem. It just, the visual of it just kind of like fits with the whole look that Inaros has going on. I don't know. It's just a aesthetic choice that I made. But what I've done with this one is I've chosen to go for electric and viral in the mods itself. Obviously the electric because we want to be able to proc our arcane stretch. And then viral because it's a pretty good status effect to be having. But what we also add on top of this is we can add on corrosive by using the melee exposure arcane. On ability cast, you gain a percent of corrosive damage on melee strikes for 25 seconds. So every time that we spam Sandstorm, we are adding corrosive damage to our melee weapon, which then translates to that elemental sandstorm. So now our elemental sandstorm, every time we cast it, is going to be dealing electric damage, viral damage, and corrosive damage, all in your sandstorm. It's some pretty sick stuff. So, and by using this build, you can basically theoretically survive through pretty much everything that the game is going to be throwing at you. Yes, there are going to be a few instances where things are going to get a little bit hairy. That's where you can use like your primary and your secondary of your choice to be able to help you in those scenarios. But the actual important part to the Inaros build with the Elemental Sandstorm is just how you build out your melee weapon. So, like I said, I built into Electric and Viral in the mods. I use the Arcane to add on Corrosive, and now I have the 3 status effects building through my Elemental Sandstorm. The second frame we are going to cover today, we're going to take a look at one that recently just got some quality of life changes with the latest update. We're going to take a look at Trinity here. Now, before people get all on me about like, why did I do this? Why did I do that? Why did I change this? This was a build for Trinity that I made before these changes, but also for a more specific reason. I built her to be the support member of the squad during Eidolon hunts. Now, with this build, there are definitely some things you can change to be more for what you want it to be. The other important thing to note with this is that this is a zero forma build, so you have nowhere to go but up with this build, right? So it's a pretty basic, straightforward, standard zero forma Trinity build, right? So some of the things that I have opted for with this build is, first off, like I said, this was before all of the quality of life changes. First thing I did was I put on Dispensary to basically further add on more support for my teammates, offer them more healing over the blessing, also adding in more energy drops for them, so that way during the Eidolon hunts they're not just running out of energy because they don't have an Arcane Nullifier and they get smacked with that mad negative EMP wave, and now they just have no energy, when it's like, oh, here, have a flower and get some energy back. And basically, ideally, you're just spamming Blessing when it runs out, drop Dispensary as you need to, and you just go from there. Now, as I said, some of these things you can definitely change. For example, I run Arcane Nullifier again because I built this for, doing the Eidolon hunts. And a rank 5 Arcane Nullifier basically just completely negates the EMP. You are not going to take damage from it. You're not going to lose any energy for it. And you basically you're still right there in the front line, keeping those lures alive, keeping your teammates alive. And you're just playing Mercy. That's basically all you're doing in that. And then the multi-efficiency, so that way your dispensary stays longer, your blessing stays longer, you keep that damage reduction up more. And along with everything else, like I said, this is a zero forma build. This is basically something that you don't really need to invest forma in to be able to have this kind of effect, even with all of the changes, because you got the blessing update, you got the link update, you've got all the other augment mods. Like, I'm running Champion's Blessing for that increased damage to my squad. Unfortunately, it does not work in solo. If you are going to be using this as solo, I recommend swap Champion's Blessing for Augur Message, so that way your blessing lasts longer for yourself as well. But if you are running with a squad, I highly recommend use Champion's Blessing, so that way not only are they going to get healed and they get that damage reduction, now they're also going to be getting more crit on top of that. Excuse me, stay hydrated, gamers. So, One thing that I will recommend about this, which may take a forma or two, if you notice that you're getting knocked around a lot, there is plenty of room to throw a forma or two on this and fit in some sure-footed into this build. So that way you're not like getting kicked around and stomped around and doing whatever. I just haven't gotten around to that doing that yet, but definitely something that you can most certainly look forward to adding to this build. Now, like I said, this is before all of the quality of life updates, so this is just something that has worked for me. I personally have not seen a reason to want to change it just yet, but with the Zero Forma, I have all the room to change it as needed. So, and that is my Trinity builds. And weapons, not exactly important. You know, run whatever you were comfortable with, whatever fits for the mission that you're running. Go nuts with that. And now this is where things get interesting. Because unlike the past two videos where I've done 5 separate frames, this one's only going to be 3 warframes, but this third one has 3 different builds that I want to cover. And the frame we're going to be covering for the final one for 3 builds, we're going to be talking about Volt. I've been having so much fun with Volt since 1999 dropped. Like, anytime I go to do anything, I'm on Volt. Just speed run everything. But there are 3 different builds that I have on here that I basically just flip flop between with whatever I'm doing. So the first actual build is just a generalized solo run. You're doing some Eidolon stuff, you're doing some endgame stuff, kind of just buffing your own damage through the roof to basically just pump out a lot of damage really quickly. And so with this, what we have here is we are utilizing the Shock Trooper augment. And if anyone knows anything about Shock Trooper, if you know anything about Saren and her Venom Dose augment, Shock Trooper essentially works the exact same way. You basically give your first ability a hold trigger to activate, and now you give electric damage to everyone in your squad that is within range. Now, being as we kind of like killed our range with this build, because again, this is mostly just you want to buff yourself, you're going to be giving yourself all of this bonus damage, which comes out to something like 240% damage boost from Shock Trooper with a 243%. 242. Yeah, it was basically Shock Trooper is basically almost a 1-to-1 based on your strength for the damage boost that it will provide you. So, and then on top of that, we've got the Arcane Avenger for if you get damaged, now you're going to get increased crit chance. We got the Arcane Nullifier, you know, stopping that EMP and taking damage from that, getting the magnetic proc, losing all your energy for what reason? You have no reason to be losing your energy for this. We got the Rifle Lamp to buff your damage for when you're hitting those joint weak spots. You got the Sure-Footed, obviously have not reached the 400 login, so I don't have Prime Sure-Footed, but that's where this is going to go. And overall, like I said, just your standard, I'm going Eidolon hunting, I'm going big game hunting. And that's pretty much just your generalized gist. So one thing I will note is that adaptation over Rolling Guard, this one is still kind of a personal preference scenario. However, in this case, for Eidolon hunting, I find that adaptation on paper seems to work better than Rolling Guard. Because having that damage resistance while you're doing all the damage, is going to be a lot easier to maintain than constantly having to, be rolling around on the ground to get those iframes when you could be, you know, shooting at joints, going to find lures, shooting the Vomvalist. So, having that damage resistance so you can actually focus on doing the Eidolon mechanic itself, that's just my personal theory and reason on paper. Now, if someone else has a better success rate with rolling guard during this kind of activity, by all means, go right ahead. I just find adaptation to be better in this scenario. So, this is the first build that I have for Volt. The second one is just a low level, you just want to have fun or you want to like speed run some stuff. We gotta go fast. Now, the trick with gotta go fast, this is basically built around your skill 2, your speed, your I'm going to make everyone run almost as fast as Gauss, but with a lot more control. So basically, the goal here is that you buff your duration, you buff your range, you buff your strength, because strength increases, your speed multiplier and your reload multiplier for speed. And that's basically all that this is doing. Your entire goal here is you want to give everyone the speed buff and have it last for as long as however you guys need it to last. So, again, molt efficiency, speed lasts longer, molt augmented, you're going to go faster, you're going to get a faster reload, you're going to get basically a stronger speed boost. And some of it from there is just kind of a little bit of, survivability, We got Amar's Hatred for the increased armor, we got adaptation for the damage reduction, we got Dreamer's Bond for the health regen and the energy regen, because, we kind of did shaft our efficiency a little bit, but we do make up for that a little bit with Archon Stretch. So, as you're running through the mission every once in a while, you just click 4, drop a discharge, get your energy back with the Archon Stretch, and just keep on running. So, and again, this is just like a low power kind of more of a chill, I just want to zoom through a mission kind of build. Now, the really fun build, which is the third build for Volt and the fifth build overall for this video that we're going to talk about, is probably the one that I find most fun, but also the most brain dead, I guess you could say, of the 3 builds. And this one is basically just a discharge spam. So basically your entire goal here is you just, if you're sitting in an area or you see just a large group of enemies, you just click 4 and everything just dies. This is your, I want to go farm, ESO solo, I want to go just ruin entire mobs in the bounties, I want to just sit on the point of defense, and anytime I see something move, it just dies on the spot. That's basically effectively what this build is trying to accomplish. So, we do take a small hit to our strength from the previous build, but we are still a net positive over 100, so we're doing increased damage versus the decreased damage, but mostly we want to increase our range with this build, because now the aura, so now, goddamn, seriously, stay hydrated, gamers. Brother. Oh, man. So, we have our increased range, which increases the AoE that Discharge reaches out to on the initial cast, which also includes the increased range of the chain of Discharge for how far the chain will reach between enemies, which is ideally what we are looking for with our Discharge. Now, in terms of doing this for solo, higher level content, one of the important mods that you want to recognize here is that we are using the Discharge Augment capacitance. So Discharge Augment converts 3% of damage dealt into shields, or converts 3% of damage dealt into shields split between Volt and squad mates. So basically, what this is saying is that for every 3% of damage that we deal with our discharge, that's going to get stacked on top of our shield. And if you're curious about how much shield you're going to get out of this, there is a 555 base shield on this Volt at the moment, just base in general. Capacitance puts that up to almost 1800 shield every time you click 4. So you're constantly just regenerating shield. You're almost kind of doing a pseudo shield gate with your discharge and capacitance, which is going to really help extend your survivability in these endgame activities. And it's just going to allow you to keep going further and further and further, you know, in like your endless missions, you know, like your survivals, your ESO, your defenses. And you're just gonna stand there. You're just gonna stand in a point. You're gonna click 4. Everything's gonna die around you, and you're just gonna have 1800 shield just for clicking 4. One thing I will mention on top of this that I've added is I did add the helmet of dispensary. What this allows me to do is that this allows me to further maintain my energy economy along with the Archon stretch, especially in ESO when you're not always going to be able to get enough energy back with the Archon stretch itself. Because, you know, if you spam an ability too many times in ESO, Samaris is going to get mad at you and be like, nah, fam, you can't do that anymore. You can't do that for a little bit. And what sucks is that the lockout timer from Samaris on duration abilities does not start until the ability has ended. So if you hit discharge and it goes for 10 seconds and Samaris gets mad at you, your 10-second lockout timer doesn't start until your 10 seconds of discharge is over. Which really sucks. Which is why basically whenever I do ESO, my loop is I cast Dispensary, I cast Speed to run around in circles, I cast Discharge, and I basically just loop between these 3 as I get energy. We got the Arcane Energize to work with the Dispensary to allow us to get increased energy from our energy pickups. And obviously we've got your standard Molt Augmented. The more kills you get with Discharge, the stronger your Discharge is going to become. So, nothing like a good old plus 60% strength to get to that 210 strength for your discharge. So, but yep. Like I said before, it's going to be a little bit different for this video. We are not covering 5 frames, but we are still covering 5 different builds. And I will say, though, trying to figure out the math on this goddamn Volt for the Forma and the polarities to be able to do all 3 of these builds. I'm pretty sure I sat here for like 25-30 minutes with a buddy of mine actually doing the math with a calculator on all of these mod costs. Just to figure out how I was going to be able to do all 3 of these builds. No, it just fucking... The math sucks. Math sucks. But we made it work. We just fucking made it work. One thing I will say is that if you're not comfortable with running the Umbral Intensify using an Umbra mod, you are more than welcome to switch it for, you know, a regular Intensify, or if you're doing the ESO build, you can do Precision Intensify and get even more power to your discharge. And just kind of go from there. I just wanted to do the Umbral because it, at base, is a 44%, but your regular Intensify is only like a 30 or 35. If you're going to do the ESO build, I highly recommend just do Precision Intensify. You get plus 90% strength to your 4th ability, you know, our discharge. And just kind of go with it from there. So, like I said, a little bit different today, but figure it's been a minute since I've put out a video for you guys, and I've been having so much fun with Volt. I hate how much fun I've been having with Volt. One other thing I will point out, I know lately I've not been covering Archon shards with some of these builds. I'm still trying to like work on my Archon shard economy and actually building up the collection of Archon shards. You know, maybe someday later down the road, once I get a few complete frame sets of Archon shards with their necessary combinations, maybe I'll revisit a few of these frames and kind of like go over some of the shards that I've added on top of them. But that's a project for later down the road. We got 1999 to go be doing. Party! We're gonna party like it's 1990. Oh, wait, yeah, no, it is 1999. It's not 2000 yet. What am I talking about? God, I'm old. But, if you made it to the end of the video, thank y'all for hanging out. Thanks for checking out my builds. Let me know down in the comments what y'all think of them. Like I said, they're just generalized builds that have kind of worked out for me with what I want to do. I know a few of these might be a bit like not min-max optimized, but that's just a lot of math that has to go into kind of doing those things. So, but yeah. If you like what you see, if you want to come see some of these builds in action, if you want to come give me some suggestions of things that I should try out, I've got like a bunch of other frames I still need to go out and build. If you got suggestions for what I should do with those, please, by all means, stop by, come check it out, come hang out. It's always a good time. I'm always streaming during Gremlin hours over on Twitch. And if you like what you see, please, by all means, subscribe, follow, ring that bell. I don't know. There's so many platforms nowadays, it's like hard to remember like what you do on each one of them. But yeah, like I said, hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next one. Later.